The term Islamophobia appeared in French literature in the early 20th century. Swedish artist and convert Ivan Agueli is credited with coining the Italian word Islamophobia in 1904 to describe negative prejudices. In 1918, French intellectuals used Islamophobia to refer to colonial efforts to undermine Islam. It was in the article The Enemies of Islam that Agueli coined the Italian word Islamophobia well before its first use in French in 1910 and in English in 1923. Islamophobia was a word coined by Europeans to criticize other Europeans. Early in 1997, the Commission on British Muslims and Islamophobia, under the chairmanship of Professor Gordon Conway, issued a consultative document. The final report, Islamophobia, A Challenge for Us All, was launched in November 1997 by the then Home Secretary, Jack Straw. It was the first time that the subject of Islamophobia had been comprehensively tackled in relation to a British Muslim population estimated at between 1.2 and 1.4 million. 60 recommendations had been put forward in the report, targeted at government departments, bodies and agencies, local and regional statutory bodies, and voluntary and private bodies. Building on the findings of a consultation paper entitled Islamophobia, Its Features and Dangers, the report sets out recommendations for practical action by government, teachers, lawyers, journalists, and by religious and community leaders. The OIC created a 10-year plan of action to meet the challenges facing the Muslims in the 21st century. Incorporated into this plan was combating Islamophobia. Emphasise the responsibility of the international community, including all governments, to ensure respect for all religions and combat their defamation. Affirm the need to counter Islamophobia through the establishment of an observatory at the OIC General Secretariat to monitor all forms of Islamophobia, issue an annual report thereon, and ensure cooperation with the relevant governmental and non-governmental organisations in order to counter Islamophobia. Endeavour to have the United Nations adopt an international resolution to counter Islamophobia, and call upon all states to enact laws to counter it, including deterrent punishments. Initiate a structured and sustained dialogue in order to project the true values of Islam and empower Muslim countries to help in the war against extremism and terrorism. The OIC, which is the largest voting bloc in the United Nations, having 57 member states, has a motto which is this: to safeguard the interests and ensure the progress and well-being of Muslims. These are the member states. Islamophobia is a combination of hate, fear, and prejudice against Islam, against Muslims, as well as anything associated with the religion, such as mosques, Islamic centres, Holy Quran, hijab. Islamophobia could be manifested through violent actions such as burning mosques, vandalizing properties, abusing women wearing Skaf, or insulting Prophet Muhammad or sacred symbols of Islam. Islamophobia manifests not only from incidents, but also through perspectives, statements, behaviours, and gestures. The UN Secretary General wants to eradicate the scourge of Islamophobia from every country and community. And the Australian Human Rights Commission called for the urgent action on rising Islamophobia. According to SBS, anti-Muslim hate has been rising. Advocates want to know how the government will respond. In this document produced by the Victorian government, challenging Islamophobia requires not only naming its harm, but also understanding its roots and how it is shaped by fear, history, and narratives that falsely link Muslim identity with threat. And this document acknowledges that Islam is not a race. Racism happens when a person or organisation uses their power to discriminate, oppress, or limit the rights of others because of their race. This is an interaction between a 60 Minutes reporter and a Muslim man. The 60 Minutes reporter asks, "Is your identity to another country?" And he says, "No, my identity is to Islam." And the reporter says, "So Australia is secondary?" And he says, "No, third, fourth, Allah comes first, Islam comes first." This spokesperson for the United Nations says that we are all human and we all have human dignity. Not according to the Quran. Non-Muslims are the worst of all creatures. He says democracy cannot survive if there's hatred that is unchecked. That we all need to stand up against hate. Islamophobia in Britain is no longer hidden, it is mainstream and it is rising. Quran chapter 60, verse 4. There has appeared between us and you hostility and hatred forever until you believe in Allah alone. And those who don't believe in Allah, such as Christians, Jews, atheists, agnostics, Hindus, etc., are called kafirs. Contrast that with Christianity, which has what is called the Golden Rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Poster on the left clearly gives the reader the impression that Islam has the Golden Rule. None of you believes until he wishes for his brother what he wishes for himself. And this sheikh says that as a Muslim, it is not permissible for me to call a Christian, a Jew, or a Hindu brother. This is an example of deception, and deception is allowed under Islamic law. From the reliance of the traveller. To utter an expression that implies one meaning while intending a different meaning, it is a kind of deception. It is permissible to lie if attaining the goal is permissible, and obligatory to lie if the goal is obligatory. Unlike Christianity, which has the 9th commandment, thou shalt not lie or bear false witness. And the general name for this deception is called taqiyya. Deception is a legally permitted strategy found in the primary Islamic doctrine and jurisprudence. And Allah is the best deceiver. The Quran states in several places that Allah is the best of planners or schemers or plotters. Here is another example of Islamic deception. This essay was posted on social media by an organisation called Yaqeen. The far right's love affair with Islamophobia. And it says, in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. The Islamic God, though, is not the same God as the Christian God. The Quraysh had always had a moon god called Allah. They had always started all documents with the phrase, in thy name, O Allah. And that is from Muhammad's biography. In the introduction of this essay, we see more deception. Anti-Muslim bias and hatred date back to the inception of the Islamic faith in the Arabian Peninsula. When Islam was confined to the city of Mecca, it was opposed by the ruling elite, the Quraysh. But again, according to Muhammad's biography, Muhammad continued to preach Islam and condemn the old Arabic religions. There were those of the Quraysh who defended their culture and religion and argued with Muhammad. Muhammad called them mockers and cursed one of them, "Oh Allah, blind him and kill his son." And in the essay, we also see this. This type of othering of Muslims has increasingly become a focal point of far-right extremist movements in Europe and North America. In 622, Muhammad created his first legal document called the Constitution of Medina. In it, he established social, political, and religious boundaries. Muslims were called believers, everyone else was regarded as the other. No believer will help an unbeliever against a believer. Believers are all friends to each other, to the exclusion of all others. They form one nation, the Ummah. Islamophobia is a combination of hate, fear, and prejudice against Islam, against Muslims. This booklet is produced every year in Australia by the Islamophobia Register and in conjunction with Monash University. According to the 2021 Australian census, New South Wales and Victoria are home to the largest numbers of Muslims, accounting for nearly 77% of all Muslims in Australia. This map shows the Islamophobic incidents in Victoria. Note the amount of incidents in the light pink areas. This is a map of New South Wales. The Minister for Multicultural Affairs launched this Combating Islamophobia resources. Developed in partnership with Victoria's Muslim communities. It is a series of guides which outline the unacceptable levels and forms of Islamophobia and will help equip Victorians with the tools to recognise and call out hate. We are also working hand in hand with Muslim community leaders and organisations to tackle Islamophobia in Victorian schools. We'll work with groups like the Islamic Museum of Australia, the Islamic Council of Victoria, and the Board of Imams to help bring that understanding into our classrooms. In 2025, Mr. Anthony Albanese, the Australian Prime Minister, appointed a special envoy, Mr. Aftab Malik, to combat Islamophobia. Mr. Malik produced this booklet titled A National Response to Islamophobia. It contains 54 recommendations. Combating Islamophobia requires a multifaceted, multi-sector, whole-of-society approach. To be effective and thorough, it involves political leadership, education and awareness raising, increased social interactions, community engagement, policy changes, legal responses and mechanisms, and the establishment of support systems. The reason for these recommendations: Islamophobia engenders social exclusion. Islamophobia has far-reaching implications for all Australians because it produces an us and them dynamic. Fear, hatred, and the mistrust of Muslim Australians and Islam encourage people to act on fear instead of fact, and Islamophobia is not a Muslim issue, but a social cohesion issue. This document presents recommendations that the Australian government will be responsible for and that the Special Envoy to combat Islamophobia will support. It is envisaged that the following federal agencies and other authorities will work together and play a key role in actioning the recommendations. The Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet, Parliamentary Joint Committee on Human Rights, Department of Home Affairs, Attorney General's Department, Department of Education, Department of Health, Disability and Ageing, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Australian Sports Commission, Department of Social Services, Department of Employment and Workplace Relations, Department of Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development, Communications, Sport and the Arts, Parliament of Australia. Also in this booklet is this statement: criticism of Islam or Muslims, when grounded in respectful and lawful debate, must remain protected as a fundamental exercise of free speech. And again in this booklet, nearly 25 years after the 11th September terror attacks, questions linger among some public intellectuals about whether a genuine separation exists between extremism and mainstream Islam. According to Muhammad's biography, if they obeyed Muhammad, then they could become true Muslims. And following in the way of Muhammad is called the Sunnah. All of the traditions and practices of the Prophet have become models to be followed by all Muslims. Muhammad is the best example. And Muhammad was all these things. In this National Response to Islamophobia booklet, there is a foreword which was written by Usman Khawaja, a former cricketer who was in the Australian cricket team. Usman is a male name of Arabic origin, commonly used in Muslim communities and often derived from the name Uthman. This name, Usman, is honoured due to Uthman ibn Affan, a companion of Prophet Muhammad and the third Caliph of Islam. Uthman invaded North Africa and Armenia and was the one who imposed the jizya, the tax on non-Muslims. And the Kabramada Mosque is named after this third caliph. Usman's middle name is Tariq, and Tariq invaded Spain in the year 711. Something else that Uthman did was burn Qurans, an act which is considered highly provocative and often associated with Islamophobia. In about 650, Uthman began noticing slight differences in recitations of the Quran as Islam expanded beyond the Arabian Peninsula into Persia, the Levant, and North Africa. In order to preserve the sanctity of the text, he ordered a committee headed by Zayd ibn Thabit to use Caliph Abu Bakr's copy and prepare a standardized version of the Quran. The text became the model from which copies were made and promulgated, with the other versions ordered to be burnt by Uthman. The Uthman medallion inside Hagia Sophia is one of 8 massive 7.5-metre black and gold calligraphic roundels installed in the 19th century. It features the name of Uthman ibn Affan, the third Rashidun Caliph, and is displayed alongside Allah, Muhammad, and the other Rashidun Caliphs in the main nave. These panels signify the Ottoman era of the monument. After the Ottomans conquered Constantinople, they transformed Hagia Sophia into an imperial mosque. It is clear that the Muslims did conquer some portion of Spain during the Caliphate of Uthman, presumably establishing colonies on its coast. On this occasion, Uthman is reported to have addressed a letter to the invading force. Constantinople will be conquered from the side of Al-Andalus. Thus, if you conquer it, you will have the honour of taking the first step towards the conquest of Constantinople. You will have your reward in this behalf, both in this world and the next. Here are some quotes describing what happened at the conquest of Constantinople. The Muslims sought out the monasteries, and all the nuns were led to the fleet and ravished and abused by the Turks, and then sold at auction for slaves throughout Turkey. The nuns were disgraced with foul debaucheries. The Grand Duke's daughter, who was quite beautiful, was forced to lie on the great altar of Hagia Sophia with a crucifix under her head and then raped. They gouged the eyes of the embalmed saints, which were then left in the middle of the streets for swine and dogs to trample on, and the images of our Lord Jesus Christ and his saints were burned or hacked to pieces. Accusations of Islamophobia and discrimination against Muslims have been made by this British MP, Imran Hussain, who spoke about innocent Muslim worshippers who were killed only for being Muslim. Speaking in the House of Commons, British MP Imran Hussain urged politicians and journalists to stop fanning the flames of anti-Muslim hatred following the recent targeting of the Manchester Central Mosque. Police arrested a man while searching for another suspect who allegedly entered the mosque in central Manchester carrying weapons. Meanwhile, a mosque is a place to carry out a sentence such as stoning. It can be used as a court for trials, verdicts, and decrees. It can be used as a war chamber, as a storage place for weapons. It's a place to receive foreign delegations and can be used as a prison for war captives. According to Erdogan, the mosques are our barracks, the domes our helmets, the minarets our bayonets, and the faithful our soldiers. In Nigeria, on Palm Sunday this year, Muslims murdered at least 30 people just for being Christians. While Christians around the world were celebrating Easter, Fulani gunmen again struck in Nigeria. The attackers stormed into St. Ignatius Catholic Church just as people were getting ready for Easter Sunday services. Now, there is an actual genocide happening in Nigeria. In 2013, a report revealed that since 2012 alone, 50 Christian churches were attacked and 366 people killed in those attacks. In Indonesia in 2011, a Muslim suicide bomber attacked a packed church, killing himself and wounding at least 37 worshippers, some critically. Security received advance warning, but as often happens in Muslim-majority countries, they left their post at the time of the attack. Kosovo, on May 15, 2024, the Church of the Holy Trinity was vandalised with Islamic graffiti, which included Allah Akbar, remove the church from here, only Muslims are here, we don't want churches, we want mosques, and Islam is the only true religion. And this is all in line with Quran 9:5. I have been commanded to fight people until they testify that there is no God but Allah and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. If they say it, they have saved their blood and possessions from me, except for the rights of Islam over them. Quran 9:29. Make war on those who have received the scriptures, Jews and Christians. They do not follow the religion of truth until they submit and pay the poll tax, the jizya, and are humiliated and subdued. And they do make war. This map shows the Christian persecution around the world. This is a map of some churches and cemeteries that have been attacked in France. Now, despite the persecution of Christians by Muslims, some Christians like these engage in gatherings like iftar dinners to foster common values among faiths. Note, though, that according to Islam, Christ was not crucified, he was not resurrected, he is not considered the Son of God, and Allah is not a father. And what did the early Christians say about Islam and Muhammad? According to St. John of Damascus, there is also the superstition of the Ishmaelites, which to this day prevails and keeps people in error, being a forerunner of the Antichrist. They are descended from Ishmael, who was born to Abraham of Agar, and for this reason they are called both Agarenes and Ishmaelites. These used to be idolaters and worshipped the morning star and Aphrodite. And so down to the time of Heraclius, they were very great idolaters. From that time to the present, a false prophet named Muhammad has appeared in their midst. This man, after having chanced upon the Old and New Testaments, and likewise, it seems, having conversed with an Arian monk, devised his own heresy. Then, having insinuated himself into the good graces of the people by a show of seeming piety, he gave out that a certain book had been sent down to him from heaven. He had set down some ridiculous compositions in this book of his, and he gave it to them as an object of veneration. According to Winston Churchill, individual Muslims may show splendid qualities, but the influence of the religion paralyzes the social developments of those who follow it. No stronger retrograde force exists in the world than Islam. And according to St. Thomas of Aquinas, Muhammad seduced the people by promises of carnal pleasure to which the concupiscence of the flesh urges us, and he gave free rein to carnal pleasure. In all this, as is not unexpected, he was obeyed by carnal men. As for the proofs of the truth of his doctrine, Muhammad said that he was sent in the power of his arms, which are signs not lacking even to robbers and tyrants. Muhammad forced others to become his followers by the violence of his arms. From Marco Polo. According to the Muslim's doctrine, whatever is stolen or plundered from others of a different faith is properly taken, and that theft is no crime. Going back to the OIC's description of Islamophobia, it is a combination of hate, fear, and prejudice against Islam, against Muslims, as well as anything associated with the religion, such as mosques. The Australian Prime Minister, Mr. Anthony Albanese, recently attended the Lakemba Mosque, where he was confronted by protesters who shouted Allahu Akbar, which is a war cry, a battle cry, a statement asserting the superiority of Allah, Islam, and Muslims over everyone else. Here is Mr. Albanese with Mr. Mike Burgess, who is the 14th Director General of Security at ASIO. Following the December 2025 Bondi terrorist attack, the Albanese government has focused on combating rising radicalisation, particularly among youth, with a $106.2 million investment in a new counter-terrorism strategy. So Mr. Albanese is investing $106.2 million to combat radicalisation among the youth. Yet, Mr. Albanese attended the mosque that is named after the first youth to be radicalised. The Lakemba Mosque is named after Ali bin Abi Talib. Now, the construction of this Lakemba Mosque was significantly funded by the Saudi royal family, who provided the largest donation of between $320,000 or $360,000 back in the 70s. Other international donations at the time included $100,000 from Libya and $30,000 from Kuwait. Now, Ali ibn Ali Talib was nicknamed the Lion of Islam because of his fierce loyalty to Muhammad. He was the first male to convert to Islam, and he pledged his allegiance to Muhammad when he was just 10 years old. From Muhammad's biography, one of the Meccans said to those taking the pledge to Muhammad, "Do you not realize what you are committing yourselves to in pledging your support to this man? It is war against all." Ali, at the Battle of Khaybar, killed a Jewish chieftain with a sword stroke which split the helmet into two pieces, the head and the body of the victim. In the Battle of Badr, it is believed that Ali ibn Ali Talib killed 35 of the 70 non-Muslims who died. 70 were taken prisoners and 70 were killed. The Zulfikar, Ali's sword, is referred to as the most powerful and deadly sword in the history of the world. The Zulfikar was a sword acquired by the Prophet Muhammad as war booty after the Battle of Badr in 624. It was later gifted to Ali ibn Ali Talib. The inscription on the sword says, "There is no hero but Ali, there is no sword but Zulfikar." And as Marco Polo said, according to the Muslims' doctrine, whatever is stolen or plundered from others of a different faith is properly taken, and that theft is no crime. Now, besides being the first youth to be radicalised, Ali ibn Abi Talib was the flag bearer of Muhammad's army. He would raise these flags and lead Muhammad's army into non-Muslim territory where he would kill, enslave, and subjugate the non-Muslims. We went towards one of the forts of Khaybar in company of Ali bin Abi Talib, who had the flag of the Prophet in his hand. Ali is regarded as one of the four rightly guided caliphs. Despite this, our Prime Minister, Mr. Anthony Albanese, was happy to attend a mosque named after him. And while Mr. Albanese was in attendance at this mosque, he was told by the Lebanese Muslim Association Secretary Gamal Kia, "We have seen the extreme rise in Islamophobia and targeted attacks on the Muslim community and the dramatic rise in Islamophobic attacks." Yet every single Muslim in attendance at this mosque is in agreement with this rule in Islamic law. The following is not subject to retaliation: a Muslim for killing a non-Muslim. And according to Sharia, there is no indemnity for killing an apostate, since it is killing someone who deserves to die. So tell me, Mr. Garmalkia, do you agree with Sharia or do you disagree with it? If you disagree, you are automatically an apostate. Here is Sheikh Arif Cheka giving a lecture at Lakemba Mosque on Saladin, who ordered the mass execution of captured Templars and Hospitallers. They were brought before his tent and one by one were beheaded. And this is something that ISIS do in imitation of Saladin. Mr. Albanese had attended this mosque to mark the end of Ramadan when prayers were said. This is the Al-Fatiha prayer, which is said 17 times a day. Note numbers 6 and 7. Guide us to the straight way, the way of those on whom you have bestowed your grace, not the way of those who have earned your anger, as in the Jews, nor of those who went astray, as in the Christians. So 17 times a day, Muslims are praying to not become like Jews and Christians. Now, Mr. Albanese may also be unaware that a mosque is not just a religious building. According to Sheikh Shady, when you look at the masjid, the mosque of the Prophet, it was more than a place of worship. It was a place of worship. It was a parliament. It was an education facility. It was an entire government. It was an entire education institution. It was an entertainment place. Sheikh Shady is president of the Australian National Imams Council and founder of the United Muslims of Australia Centre. When he was 16 years old, he went to Pakistan. My whole aim, he says, was to acquire the Islamic knowledge and theology. He was in Pakistan for 2 years and in Syria for 6 years. Sheikh Shady knows Islam. And the Sheikh has big ambitions for Australia. I want to see Islam enter every house made out of tent or made out of brick. We are just a continuous vision of the Prophet, he says. Islamophobia can be manifested through violent actions such as burning mosques, vandalizing properties, abusing women, wearing Skaf, or insulting Prophet Muhammad, according to the OIC. The Byzantine Roman Emperor Emmanuel II said, "Show me just what Muhammad brought that was new, and there you will find things only evil and unhuman, such as his command to spread by the sword the faith that he preached." Now, any perceived hate, fear, and prejudice against Islam or anything associated with the religion of Islam is also considered Islamophobic. Islam allows pedophilia, slavery, incest, FGM, the killing of apostates, amputations, the taking of Kafir females as sex slaves, child marriage, cousin marriage, polygamous marriage, honour killing, dimitude, and wife beating. So what decent person would not hate Islam? Mr. Imran Hussein brings up the so-called holy month of Ramadan. Well, what happened in Ramadan? The Great Battle of Badr. A key event in Ramadan and a turning point in Islamic history. The Muslim victory in the decisive Battle of Badr marked the onset of a series of triumphs during the sacred month of Ramadan, a period synonymous with conquests, blessings, and empowerment. Reflecting on significant episodes in Muslim history associated with Ramadan, foremost among them is the Great Battle of Badr. Led by the Prophet Muhammad, the Muslims emerged triumphant against the Quraysh forces, signifying a decisive moment against disbelief and falsehood. Following the authorization for jihad during the Medina period, Muslims learned of a significant Quraysh caravan returning from the Levant, laden with wealth, under the leadership of Abu Sufyan and Suhail ibn Amr. Responding to this, the Prophet mobilized his companions to intercept the caravan. Ramadan is the month in which the Quran was revealed to Muhammad. The Quran, which has verses such as this: "There has appeared between us and you hostility and hatred forever until you believe in Allah alone. Make war on those who have received the scriptures, Jews and Christians. They do not follow the religion of truth until they submit and pay the poll tax, the jizya, and are humiliated and subdued. We will strike terror into the hearts of the Kafirs because they worship others besides Allah. But once the sacred months have passed, kill the polytheists wherever you find them, capture them, besiege them, and lie in wait for them on every way." And of course, Quran 98:6, Kafirs, non-Muslims, are the worst of all creatures. But Muslims are the best of people. So Mr. Imran Hussein considers Ramadan holy, a time when Muslims conquered people who wouldn't conform to their beliefs, a time when Muslims ambushed them and stole their belongings. These are the practices which demonstrate Islamic values and ethics. Compare these values to Christian values and ethics. Christian British values combine foundational Christian principles such as love, compassion, humility, and service, with core British democratic principles like fairness, respect, and community responsibility. These values often focus on serving others, maintaining integrity, ensuring equality, and fostering community cohesion, often influenced by a history of Christian tradition in society. And you call yourself British, Mr. Hussein. You bear the name of Muhammad's grandson, the one who is commemorated at the Ashura procession, which takes place in England and in Australia. So from Muslim MPs in England to Muslim leaders in Australia, we can see that jihad of the sword is not the only jihad. There is also jihad of the tongue. I heard the messenger of Allah say, "Whoever among you sees an evil, let him change it with his hand. If he cannot, then with his tongue. If he cannot, then with his heart, and that is the weakest of faith." An example of jihad of the tongue is accusing people of being Islamophobes or racists when they engage in legitimate discussion about Islam. Senator Hanson was labelled a racist when she wore a burqa into the Senate to prove the point that the burqa was a national security risk. Someone who was particularly upset by this was Mr. George Brandis, who said, "Senator Hanson, it is absolutely consistent with being a good law-abiding Australian and being a strict adherent Muslim." For those of you not familiar with Mr. George Brandis, he's the former Attorney General for Australia, the former Australian High Commissioner to the UK, and currently a professor in the practice of national security at the Australian National University. Senator Hanson appeared on ABC's Q&A in July 2016. She was on the panel and was questioned about her Islamophobia by this Mohammedan, a Mr. Alamar, and he put this to Senator Hanson. "My 11-year-old son recently asked me, 'What is Islamophobia?' Rather than explain it to him in my own words, he and I sat down side by side and watched a few of your past and recent videos. Now, if I was in the audience, I would ask for the microphone and I would say this: I have an 11-year-old daughter and she is terrified because she knows about Islam. She knows that to a Mohammedan, she's someone who can be taken captive and abused, taken as a right-hand possession. She can be abused, beaten, and she's easily identified as a non-Muslim female because she doesn't wear a hijab." In his foreword in the National Response to Islamophobia booklet, Mr. Usman Khawaja wrote this: "A Muslim woman who covers her hair automatically becomes a target for hate and prejudice." This sheikh compared women who do not wear a headscarf to uncovered meat, implying that they invited sexual assault. O Prophet, tell your wives and your daughters and the women of the believers to draw their cloaks, their veils, all over their bodies, except the eyes or one eye to see the way. That will be better that they should be known as free, respectable women so as not to be annoyed. My mother is a hijab-wearing woman. I have seen how people look at her as she is walking down the street, going to the supermarket or the park for a walk. Christian girls are abducted from the streets in Egypt. The looks and double takes she gets from people are quite disturbing. Now, something that was and still is very disturbing was this. On the left is Bilal Skaf with his younger brother Muhammad. On the right is just one of the victims who has gone by the name of Amanda. Amanda was on a train one afternoon coming back home from a job interview when she was approached by a group of Lebanese Muslim males. They asked her if she wanted to smoke marijuana. She agreed and she left the train with them. What happened after that is what I will refer to from this point on as GR. Bilal and Muhammad, along with others, were arrested. And as you can see, Bilal was quite proud of himself. In this interview on 60 Minutes, Amanda describes how they asked her what her nationality was. She told them she was Australian. They called her an Aussie pig. She said these people were making out like I was some kind of a lesser being. That's because we are. Bilal especially had a contempt for women. And during the trial, one female relative of one of the defendants called the Crown Prosecutor Margaret Caneen a sharmuta, which is Arabic for the word slut. Cindy Wagner, who wrote the book Evil in the Suburbs, wondered if there was something within Islam which suggested that it was okay to have committed these rapes. The Muslims said, will she be one of the mothers of the believers or a female slave whom his right hand possesses? They said if he has a hijab for her, then she will be one of the mothers of the believers, and if she does not have a hijab, then she will be a female slave whom his right hand possesses. Cindy Wagner also felt that the Muslim community leaders themselves didn't come out early enough and denounce this behaviour. Well, that is because in the Apostle of Allah, Muhammad, is a beautiful pattern of conduct. From Sahih al-Bukhari, we went with Allah's apostle and we captured some of the Arabs as captives, and the long separation from our wives was pressing us hard, and we wanted to practice coitus interruptus. We asked Allah's apostle whether it was permissible. He said, it is better for you not to do so. No soul, that which Allah has destined to exist up to the day of resurrection, but will definitely come into existence. And at the sentencing of Muhammad Skaf, who was still then a teenager, Judge Fanain described him as a vicious, cowardly bully, arrogant, and a liar, as well as being a rapist. Now, Judge Fanain could have also been describing Muhammad, because Muhammad was all of those things and more. Judge Finane also said that there was no evidence that any offences were committed because of religious or cultural or racial reasons, and in fact, there had been no mention of religion at any time in the trial. We can definitely see some similarities. Judge Finane said, these were not random attacks, and in my view, they were aimed at creating terror in the community. Muhammad said, I've been made victorious through terror. I will cast terror into the hearts of the disbelievers, so strike their necks and strike their fingertips. Judge Finane compared the Skaf gang's depravity to outrages committed by invading armies in times of war, a menace to any civilized society. Maximus the Confessor said the invaders were a barbarous people of the desert, wild and untamed beasts whose form alone is human, and they had come to devour civilized government. This was a message found on the phone of Bilal Skaf. When you are feeling down, bash a Christian or Catholic and lift up. Quran 9:14. Fight against them so that Allah will punish them by your hands and disgrace them and give you victory over them and heal the breasts of a believing people. And in relation to the Skaf gang, Judge Finane said, no one knows what their motivation was. Actually, we do. One of the motivating factors is the doctrine of loyalty and enmity. Again, there has appeared between us and you hostility and hatred forever until you believe in Allah alone. The Constitution of Medina was the first legal document established by Muhammad in 622. It established the Islamic community, the Ummah, which transcends geographical borders. And according to this document, which is approved by Allah, no believer will help an unbeliever against a believer. Believers are all friends to each other to the exclusion of all others. Another motivating factor is that non-Muslim females are considered right-hand possessions. The hand of Allah's apostle did not touch any woman's hand except the hand of that woman his right hand possessed, that is, his captives or his lady slaves. When Muhammad was going into battle, he would encourage his men to join him by tempting them with the Byzantine women. Would you like the girls of Banu al-Afsar? Said Muhammad. And the Byzantine women were white-complexioned blondes with straight hair and blue eyes. And these white girls are still targeted today by Mohammedan men who consider them to be their right-hand possessions or their sex slaves. Here is one of the many, many victims of Mohammedans like these. Mr. Khawaja believes there's nothing more difficult than being a hijab-wearing Muslim. Now, it wasn't bad enough that English girls over the period of decades were taken by so-called grooming gangs in England. What made it worse was that it was covered up. But why? A Muslim is a Muslim's brother. He does not wrong him or abandon him. And if anyone conceals a Muslim's fault, Allah will conceal his fault on the day of resurrection. Ten men, mostly Syrian refugees, had been found guilty over the GR of a woman outside a German nightclub. Staff failed to report serious sexual assault allegations to police out of concern that the suspects would be labelled typical Muslims. The scandal follows months of troubling behaviour and harassment of female visitors at the centre, which both staff and the Youth Welfare Office tried to cover up. Holy hell. Now, the third thing that is a motivator is that Muslims are required to imitate Muhammad's example, the Sunnah. It is a path, a way, a manner of life, the way of Muhammad. All of the traditions and practices of the Prophet have become models to be followed by all Muslims. Muhammad is the best example. And as we saw, Muhammad was all of these things: a racist, a murderer, a liar, an adulterer, a slave trader, a thief, and a rapist. Now, in the Skaf family home, photographs of Mr. Skaf, his wife Baria, who's pictured here, and their 4 children adorn the walls alongside religious texts written in Arabic. What were those religious texts, Mrs. Skaf? Were they verses from the Quran? Was it this verse? Quran 48:29. Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, and those who are with him are severe against disbelievers and merciful amongst themselves. In snapshots when Skaf was young, Mrs. Skaf does not cover her head with scarf. She looks like an ordinary Australian mother in denim skirts and t-shirts. However, soon after Skaf's arrest, she donned the veil. Isn't that interesting? You know that the hijab distinguishes respectful women from sharmutas. During the trial, one female relative of one of the defendants called Crown Prosecutor Margaret Caneen a sharmuta, which is Arabic for the word slut. Hijab-wearing Muslim, they literally wear their religion on their sleeves. Tell your wives and your daughters and the women of the believers to draw their cloaks over their bodies. That will be better, that they should be known as free, respectable women, so as not to be annoyed. Yet in Australia, there is no concept in our law that there is a category of person called loose women who are deemed somehow to consent. And according to Margaret Cunneen, these Lebanese Muslim males who are on trial clearly had no respect for the judicial system. But if you think that this disrespect for our legal system is unique to the Skaf family, it isn't. The first person in New South Wales to be charged over refusing to stand before a judge on religious grounds has stood for a Sydney magistrate. The wife of a terrorist recruiter allegedly failed to stand for District Court Judge Audrey Bella multiple times, saying she only stood for Allah. And the reason for this disrespect is because our laws are man-made laws, while Islamic law or Muhammad's law is divine law. And therefore, Islamic law is regarded as superior to our laws. One of the other perpetrators in the GR, who has been described as extraordinarily unrepentant, was Bilal Hijade. When confronted by a reporter from A Current Affair, he said this: "You know what you are? You're the lowest of all kind. You're lower than scum. You could even say we're the worst of all creatures." Amanda describes how they didn't think of her as a person, they thought of her as rubbish, as meat. This sheikh compared women who do not wear a headscarf to uncovered meat, implying that they invited sexual assault. And Muslims are the best of people. And they become the best of people by following the Sunnah, the way of Muhammad, because Muhammad is the best example. According to Sheikh Shady, Muslims need to ask themselves this: is our way of life in accordance with the Sunnah? The Prophet is not just there to preach Islam, to teach Islam. He is there to be followed. He is there to be imitated. The way you defend the Prophet is by reviving his Sunnah. The Prophet becomes the most beloved human being to our kids, their superhero in their life, their great example, their great role model. And by the age of 19, Bilal Skaf was already all of these things. And before Bilal became a GRist, he was a thief. Remember, following the authorization of jihad during the Medina period, Muslims learned of a significant Quraysh caravan returning from the Levant laden with wealth. Muhammad mobilized his companions to intercept the caravan. And this, the Zulfikar, was a sword acquired by Prophet Muhammad as war booty after the Battle of Badr in 624. And this hadith: if you come to a township which has surrendered without a formal war and stay therein, you have a share in it. If a township disobeys Allah and His Messenger, 1/5 of the booty seized therefrom is for Allah and His Apostle, and the rest is for you. And Marco Polo said, according to the Muslims' doctrine, whatever is stolen or plundered from others of a different faith is properly taken, and the theft is no crime. At no point did Mrs. Skaf approach the girls or their lawyers and express how horrified and disgusted she was at what her sons did. Instead, Mrs. Skaf abused 3 of her son's young victims and as a result was threatened with jail. Even the judge's life was in danger after he jailed Bilal Skaf for a record 55 years. Mrs. Skaf didn't just raise one son who was a jihadist, she raised 2. And far from being the best of people, these 2 boys have now earned the name Skaf Scum. Tell me, Mrs. Skaf, how did it feel sitting in a courtroom that operates under the laws of the kuffar and having your son's guilt or innocence determined not by Muhammad, not by Allah, but by the worst of all creatures, a jury of kafirs? How did it feel having to stand and pay respect to a kafir judge? A judge who preceded his sentencing remarks by saying, in the year of our Lord Jesus Christ. How did it feel, Mrs. Skaf, having to sit in that kafir courtroom day after miserable day and listen to that sharmuta of a prosecutor while she condemned your boys for acts which are considered vile and horrendous under Australian law, but are absolutely acceptable in the Islamic world because they are perfectly legal under Islamic law, a law which every single Muslim, regardless of where he or she lives in the world, is bound to agree with and follow. You can't be a Muslim if you don't. Are you listening, Mr. Brandis? Now, the Skaf brothers ended up in Supermax jail, which is referred to as Super Mosque, because most of the inmates are Muslims. Supermax, located in Goulburn, holds the state's most dangerous criminals and often features a high concentration of Muslims, largely due to both convictions for terrorism-related offences and inmate conversions. Muslim males have been involved in numerous murders over the past years, many of them unprovoked fatal attacks on young Australian men for no reason other than that they are skips, what they call Australians. A large number of Middle Eastern males would enter a club, upwards of 20 at a time. They would outnumber the security staff and begin assaulting Australian male patrons, sometimes stabbing them. In court, Judge Finane made the following comment. There are things that are said to the victims that suggest a sort of dominance, an attitude of dominance, an attitude that these girls are just beneath contempt, and these fellows have a duty, almost a right or duty, to treat them contemptuously. At one point during Amanda's ordeal, one of the males, as he was about to violate her, said this, "It's my right." Now, why would he believe that? Because from birth, he has been told either by his parents or by his Muslim brothers or by his sheikh, his imam at the local mosque. In fact, he has been told by Muhammad himself that it is his right. And when Muhammad has told him that it is, there isn't a kafir judge anywhere in the world who can tell him that it isn't. Muslims are taught from birth that they are superior, that it is their duty to rid the world of anything that is kufar, disbelief. The whole world is to submit to Islam's authority. So the psychology of the Muslim is unique. Their behaviour is unique. What drives their behaviour is unique. Their ethics, their morals, their worldview, their attitudes, they're all unique. So what we need is an independent body that examines crimes perpetrated by Muslims and only by Muslims. A body that consists of kafirs only. Kafirs who won't be influenced by large donations from Arab states. Kafirs who won't be persuaded by the prospect of secure or prestigious positions. Incorruptible kafirs. I wonder if while in Supermax, Bilal and his brother continued to follow in the footsteps of their prophet and also get jihad like their prophet did by al-Zut. And in Muhammad's case, it was consensual. Maybe Amanda, brave Amanda, who has more courage than our Prime Minister and our King. Maybe Amanda can ask Bilal the same question she was asked on that fateful day. Now, speaking of questions, let's go back to Q&A and to our friend, Mr. Alamar. Now, if I was on the Q&A panel, I would allow Mr. Alamar to finish gaslighting Senator Hanson, and then I would say this. Can you please stand up, Mr. Alamar, so everyone can see you, the proud Mohammedan that you are? And please tell our audience all about the man who you were named after, Khalid. Better yet, allow me. Khalid ibn al-Walid, nicknamed the Sword of Allah. 9 swords were broken in my hand, and only a Yemenite sword of mine remained in my hand, said Khalid. He was a 7th century Arab military commander. He remained undefeated in over 200 battles. One of Khalid's most famous quotes: "We Arabs are in the habit of drinking blood, and we are told the blood of the Romans is the sweetest of its kind, so we came to shed your blood and drink it." And another: "I bring you men who desire death as ardently as you desire life." After Muhammad's death, there was a widespread renouncement of Islam throughout Arabia. Many people left Islam. They apostatized. Khalid was one of the military commanders of the Islamic army, and he was appointed to fight and subdue those rebel groups. Here are some of the things he did. Following the killing of Malik, it was reported that Khalid ordered the decapitated head of Malik to be placed among stones and used to build a fire to cook food, a move intended to terrify the local tribes and punish apostasy. During the Battle of Ulay against the Sassanid Persians, Khalid vowed to turn a local river into a river of blood if he were victorious. Khalid took a vast number of prisoners and ordered them all to be beheaded in order to fulfill his vow and intimidate the Persian Empire. After the Battle of Yamama, Khalid ordered the execution of all adult male survivors, regardless of their surrender, and the enslavement of women and children. Known for his bravery, Khalid reportedly fought with immense vigour, symbolising a drawn sword of God against disbelief. He was one of the most successful military commanders in history. And Muslims today study his military genius. In accordance with Islamic law, non-Muslims will ultimately be given three choices. The three choices, often associated with early Islamic conquests: conversion to Islam, payment of jizya, tribute, as a dhimmi, or death. And these choices were developed from the Sunnah, the example and teachings of Muhammad. And it is Khalid who is credited with formalizing these three choices. In this interview, Sheikh Shady explains how he has told Muslims that they are living in this country as a minority. He's told them, don't act like you're the majority, you're only 3%. Don't act like you're 97%. The Muslim population in Australia has grown significantly, making it one of the fastest growing religious groups and constituting 3.2% of the total population. Growth is driven by immigration from countries like Pakistan, India, Afghanistan, and Lebanon. By the end of 2024, the Australian Muslim community is expected to reach a significant milestone, with the population surpassing 1 million for the first time. Now back to Mr. Alomar, who had asked Senator Hanson, what is the basis of your Islamophobic feelings? Is it hate, fear, or ignorance? Senator Hanson responds by saying, none of the above. Why did the Lind Cafe happen? Why was Curtis Cheng murdered? Why are there terrorist attacks around the world? Why did we have 5 men go and fight for ISIL? Why, says Mr. Alomar? Because of people like you, he says to Senator Hanson. People like you who have extremely dangerous and disturbing rhetoric. He says it's a fuel to hatred, bigotry, and ignorance. So, Mr. Alomar, how do you explain this? Quran 9:29. make war on those who have received the scriptures. They do not follow the religion of truth until they submit and pay the poll tax and are humiliated and subdued. How do you explain the last 1400 years of Islamic expansion and conquest and barbarity? How do you explain the obligation that is on every single Muslim to perform jihad? You should know that the earth belongs to Allah and His Apostle Muhammad. Jihad is obligatory for every Muslim. And jihad means to war against non-Muslims and is etymologically derived from the word mujahada, signifying warfare to establish the religion of Islam. Jihad has been carried out on all these countries. 60 million Christians have perished, 120 million Africans, 80 million Hindus, 10 million Buddhists. These red dots show where Muslim forces have waged battles, a history of battles that hasn't been taught in any of our schools and universities, but should be. A history that these two gentlemen have been trying to bring to the attention of our leaders, our authorities, and the general public for over 20 years. And they have been vilified for it. They have been called every name under the sun. Names like racist, hateful, bigoted Islamophobes. But they have let all those names rebound off their thick skin like bullets bounce off the chest of Superman. And they have persisted in speaking the truth. Why? Because when you have the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, you shouldn't be scared of being called names, Kafirs. You should be fearless. Isn't that right, Christians? According to the Global Terrorism Index 2025, modern terrorism is carried out predominantly by Muslim groups. The 4 terrorist groups responsible for the most deaths in 2024 were Muslim. And this terrorist activity or jihad is not driven by particular grievances. It's not because of poverty or foreign policy or disadvantage. It is purely because we are infidels. And Muslims are to have loyalty to each other and enmity towards everyone else. Muhammad's biography itself states that Islam drew first blood. And Islam shot the first arrow. It was shot by Said. And according to Mr. Alamar, the rhetoric of people like Senator Hanson fuels bigotry. The classical manual of Sharia law, The Reliance of the Traveller, describes the status of the non-Muslim subjects of the Islamic State. and this was derived from the Pact of Umar, who was the second caliph. This is a writing to Umar from the Christians. We will not erect in our city or the suburbs any new monastery, church, cell, or hermitage, that we will not repair any of such buildings that may fall into ruins, or renew those that may be situated in the Muslim quarters of the town, that we will not refuse the Muslims entry into our churches, either by night or by day, that we will open the gates wide to passengers and travellers, that we will receive any Muslim traveller into our houses and give him food and lodging for 3 nights, that we will not harbour any spy in our churches or houses, or conceal any enemy of the Muslims, that we will not teach our children the Quran, that we will not make a show of the Christian religion, nor invite anyone to embrace it, that we will not prevent any of our kinsmen from embracing Islam if they so desire, that we will honour the Muslims and rise up in our assemblies when they wish to take their seats, that we will not imitate them in our dress, either in the cap, turban, sandals, or parting of the hair, that we will not make use of their expressions of speech, nor adopt their surnames. Infidels must not use greetings and special phrases employed only by Muslims, that we will not ride on saddles, or gird on swords, or take to ourselves arms or wear them, or engrave Arabic inscriptions on our rings, that we will not sell wine, which is forbidden to Muslims, that we will shave the front of our heads, that we will keep to our own style of dress wherever we may be, that we will not display the cross upon our churches or display our crosses or our sacred books in the streets of the Muslims or in their marketplaces, that we will strike the clappers in our churches lightly, that we will not recite our services in a loud voice when a Muslim is present, that we will not carry palm branches on Palm Sunday or our images in procession in the streets, that at the burial of our dead we will not chant loudly or carry lighted candles in the streets of the Muslims or their marketplaces, that we will not take any slaves that have already been in the possession of Muslims, nor spy into their houses, and that we will not strike any Muslim. And Mr. Alamar wants to speak about bigotry. Now, Australia is a signatory on the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which is a key 1966 UN treaty in force since 76 that binds 173 plus nations to protect fundamental human rights. It guarantees rights to life, freedom of speech, religion, assembly, and fair trials, while prohibiting torture, slavery, and arbitrary detention. The Organisation of Islamic Cooperation, which is the largest voting bloc in the United Nations, refused to sign onto the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Instead, it created its own Declaration of Human Rights, which is in accordance with Sharia. The Cairo Declaration of Human Rights affirms the freedom and right to a dignified life in accordance with the Islamic values and principles. And it is cognizant of the Charter of Medina, which it states should underpin the conception of human rights. And contrary to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which safeguards freedom of religion. According to Islamic law, whoever changes their religion should be killed. Bigotry and hatred is central to Islam. Let's look at Islamic charity. Charity is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. It's referred to as zakat, and it's an obligation on every single Muslim. There are 8 categories considered worthy of receiving zakat: the poor, the needy, the zakat collectors or administrators, converts to Islam or those inclined to embrace Islam, those in bondage, those in debt, the cause of Allah, which is jihad, and the travellers or wayfarers. Now, it is invalid to give zakat to a non-Muslim because the lawgiver has ordered that it be returned to the poor Muslim. Again, loyalty and enmity, al-wala wal-bara. The rights and obligations of Muslims with respect to one another include aid and assistance, affection meant to be between the believers, the disbelievers, the corrupt, and the heretical have no place in it. This is one of the largest organisations in Australia which collects zakat, the National Zakat Foundation. And on their website are videos, one of which is this one, which explains who is entitled to zakat. And as you can see, number 7 is the cause of Allah, which is jihad. Whoever spends a small amount on jihad will be welcomed by name by the gatekeepers of paradise. Muhammad said, 2 angels descend from paradise each day. One says, "O Allah, reward those who contribute to jihad." And the other says, "O Allah, kill those who refuse to support jihad." And the National Zakat Foundation is officially registered by the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profits Commission, the ACNC. Now, if it wasn't bad enough that there is an obligation on every Muslim to finance jihad against non-Muslims, there is a flip side to this, which is that all Muslims are forbidden from contributing to the Kafir's defence. Muslims are forbidden from owning shares that are not Sharia compliant, such as those from companies involved with defence. And this is in line with the principle of loyalty and enmity. Loyalty to Muslims and enmity towards Kafirs. As per Quran 5:51 and 48:29. So Muslims are required to contribute financially to war against non-Muslims, but cannot contribute financially to the Kafir's defence against those attacks. He who provides the equipment for a soldier in jihad has himself performed jihad. And speaking of defence and national security, Senator Hanson was removed from the Senate for wearing a burqa. The Australian Federation of Islamic Councils claimed that this was an act of deliberate racism. Even though Islam is not a race. The point Senator Hanson was making is that the burqa is a threat to our national security because we don't know who is under the burqa. And deception is a legally permitted strategy in Islam. Senator Hanson has worn the burqa in the Senate on 2 occasions. When she wore it the first time, she received a severe reprimanding from Mr. George Brandis. Referring to the burqa as Islam's religious garment, Mr. Brandis said, "To mock its religious garments is an appalling thing to do." Yet according to the Quran, females who do not cover themselves with veils are not considered respectable women and can be annoyed. And let's not forget Imam Hilali, who compared women who don't wear a headscarf to uncovered meat. Women who invite sexual assault. Mr. Brandis continued to reprimand Senator Hanson, saying, "Senator Hanson, it is absolutely consistent with being a good law-abiding Australian and being a strict adherent Muslim. Under Australian law, wife beating is a crime, as per the Crimes, Domestic and Personal Violence Act 2007. Under Muhammad's law, wife beating is permitted in accordance with Quran 434, which says beat them. Under Australian law, murder is a crime as per the Crimes Act 1900. Under Muhammad's law, murder is permitted in accordance with Quran 489, which says slay them wherever you find them. Under Australian law, rape is a crime, and in Victoria it is covered by the Crimes Act 1958, Section 35. Under Muhammad's law, rape is permitted, and this is stated in the Reliance of the Traveller 09.13. When a child or a woman is taken captive, they become slaves by the fact of capture. The Criminal Code Act 1995 makes child marriage a crime under Australian law, but this is allowed under Islamic law, and as per Bukhari 5133, the Prophet married her, Aisha, when she was 6 years old and consummated the marriage when she was 9 years old. And as per this article by CNN, Iraqi lawmakers passed a bill that legalised child marriage. The changes would allow marriage of girls in their early teens or as young as 9. Mr. Brandis, in addressing Senator Hanson, said, "For the last 4 years, I have had the responsibility preeminently among the ministers subject to the Prime Minister for National Security Policy. I wonder if our national security policy takes into account the fact that taqiyya is used in warfare." In the Reliance of the Traveller, the Sharia Manual, you'll find this in chapter 10.2, that Muslims are allowed to give a misleading impression, to utter an expression that implies one meaning while intending a different meaning. It is a kind of deception. And permissible lying, in chapter 8.2, it is permissible to lie if attaining the goal is permissible, and obligatory to lie if the goal is obligatory. Dar al-Harb, is a house of war. The house of war, or the land of warfare, is a country belonging to the infidels which has not yet been subdued by Islam. The theological basis for Dar al-Harb is the doctrine found in the Hadith, as well as in the Quran, that the earth belongs to Allah and to His Messenger. This leads to the idea that jihad is a defensive war, liberating what already belongs to Allah and to His Ummah. By waging jihad, the Muslims are taking back what is theirs, even the whole world. Since the world belongs to the Ummah, any power that prevents them from having it is by definition oppressive and usurping the Ummah's rights. Here we have our Australian Defence Force reaching out to the Muslim community. From Muhammad's biography, we find these. A Muslim should not kill another Muslim, nor should he help a kafir against a Muslim. A non-believer should not intervene against a Muslim. Muslims should oppose any who would sow discord among other Muslims. Our military would do well to familiarise themselves with the tactics and strategies used by Muhammad, who was one of the greatest military leaders in history, the only one, in fact, who is still commanding an army from the grave. War is deceit, said Muhammad, and Allah is the best of deceivers. See they not that we gradually reduce the land of the disbelievers by giving it to the believer in war victories from its outlying borders? And Allah judges, there is none to put back His judgment, and He is swift at reckoning. Islam did not come to coexist. The Prophet Muhammad said Islam is always superior and should never be surpassed. I have been made victorious through terror, said Muhammad. Millions of modern people have forgotten all about Islam. They take it for granted that it is just a foreign religion which will not concern them. It is, as a fact, the most formidable and persistent enemy which our civilization has had, and may at any moment become as large a menace in the future as it has been in the past. At the bottom right of the screen, there is a link in blue to this article which describes the Battle of Talikota. Internal betrayals often played a significant role in the loss of Hindu rulers to invading Muslim forces. One of the most pivotal betrayals occurred in the Battle of Talikota, 1565. Trusted Muslim commanders, the Galani brothers, switched sides. In this publication, A National Response to Islamophobia, Mr. Aftab Malik presents the Australian government with recommendations which all serve to advance the Islamic agenda, which is to erode and erase our traditions, make Australia become more Sharia compliant, and ultimately Islamic. Islamic propaganda relating to Islamic celebrations is produced so as to be taught in schools under the guise of inclusion. There are mosque open days, World Hijab Day. Halal food is being produced and sold in our supermarkets. Interfaith meetings are held between our Christian and Muslim leaders where they speak about so-called common values, while our churches are being bought up and converted into mosques. The BBC is calling for an end to dog-friendly spaces in order to appease Muslims and advance Sharia. But in its eagerness to cast yet another black person in their commercials, the BBC has made a little faux pas. Muslims don't like dogs because Muhammad didn't like dogs, so he had them killed, especially the black ones. We, the angels, do not enter a home in which there is a dog or a picture. The next day, the Messenger of Allah commanded that all dogs be killed, even small ones. What is wrong with a black dog and not a red one? Abu Dar said. I asked the Messenger of Allah the same question, and he said the black dog is a shaitan, a Satan. Muhammad was a white man who owned black slaves and didn't like being referred to as black. Anyone who said that the Prophet was black should be killed. Whoever wants to see Satan, let him take a look at Nabtal al-Harith. He was a sturdy black man. The way of life that exists before Islam takes control is called the Age of Ignorance or Jahiliyyah. Jahiliyyah means a religion and lifestyle that follows a line contrary to the line of Islam in nature and aim. Jahiliyyah, ignorance, is a way of life. It has its own faith, way of thinking, and lifestyle, including social manners, worship, values and concepts, viewpoint towards life, method to create civilization, and a direction for human activities in areas such as culture, art, literature, politics, economy, power, law, and order. Whoever does good in Islam will not be punished for what he did in the pre-Islamic period of ignorance. Mr. Zoran Mamdani, the Mayor of New York, said he'd like to ask King Charles to return the Kohinoor diamond to India. Perhaps Mr. Mamdani should give some thought to all the treasures that Muslims have taken from other lands and other peoples in the past. During the Muslim invasion of India, Muhammad ibn Qasim saw an idol made of gold, and its two eyes were bright with rubies. Muhammad Qasim ordered the idol to be taken up, destroyed. 230 mans of gold were obtained and 40 jars filled with gold dust. The gold and the image were brought to treasury together with the gems and pearls and treasures which were obtained from the plunder of Multan. Why don't you tell the good people of New York all about how the Zulfikar will make its reappearance and why, Mr. Mamdani, you, Shiite. According to the Shiite belief, the Mahdi is a prophesied figure who will appear at the end of time to rid the world of evil and injustice, establishing a global Islamic kingdom. He will emerge wielding the Zulfikar. With this National Response to Islamophobia booklet, Mr. Malik has captured all areas of Australian society, from education to health to social services to workplace relations, sports, the arts, academia, education, all the way up to the office of the Prime Minister. I'd like to draw your attention, Kafirs, to the expressions on the faces of Mr. Malik and Miss Anne Ali. They mean business. Mr. Albanese, however, has no idea that what he's holding in his hand is the catalyst that will bring Australia under the authority of Islam. If these recommendations are implemented, all those areas of society will become Sharia compliant. You want to know how to turn a Dar al-Harb into a Dar al-Islam without firing a shot? Well, this is how you do it. Now, Mr. Malik has taken into account all aspects of Australian society. All aspects, it seems, except one. Me. You see, Mr. Malik, you're probably used to dealing with Kafirs who don't know anything about Islam. Kafirs like Mr. Albanese here. And you might be envisaging, Mr. Malik, that this great southern land will submit to the authority of Islam and will do it quietly. And maybe it will. But for you and others like you, I'm not going to make it easy. My name is not Anthony Albanese. My name is Fatima. And my namesake has her heel on the head of the snake. So make no mistake, Mr. Malik. She'll crush it. Now, despite the racism of Muhammad and Allah, Muslim MPs and their Kafir allies, as well as AFIC, have accused Pauline Hanson of racism. She's had to face being insulted and mocked by people such as Fatima Payman, Maureen Faruqi, and Lydia Thorpe. And Senator Hanson has had to defend herself against these hypocrites, and she's done it all on her own. Not anymore. There is a trial coming up. Trial about hypocrisy. Let's see if these champions of social justice and others will be able to defend themselves, their God and their prophet. Because you see, Kafirs, to be a Muslim, a good Muslim that is, you have to hold Muhammad in exceptionally high regard. You have to follow him and you have to imitate him in every single way. Because Muhammad is a beautiful pattern of conduct. And you have to love Muhammad with all your heart. In fact, that love has to be so great that it is actually a type of worship. Wouldn't you say, Sheikh Shady? Loving Allah is loving the Prophet. And when we're talking about love here, we are talking about a love that is considered to be a worship. a love that is considered to be ibadah, that is, the love of Allah and the love of His Messenger, Muhammad. Allah makes it clear that if you follow the path of His Messenger, then you will be with Him in the hereafter. Very true, Sheikh. The fresco painted by Giovanni de Modena represents a scene from Dante Alighieri's Inferno and depicts Muhammad in hell being devoured by demons. Here's a close-up. See, Muhammad offers a path that has been laid out by a God who calls himself the best of deceivers, a God who more than anything desires death. Adopting from the new revelation of Jesus, the faith and hope of immortal life and a future retribution, Muhammad humbled it to the dust by adapting all the rewards and sanctions of his religion to the gratification of the sexual passion. He poisoned the sources of human felicity at the fountain by degrading the condition of the female sex and the allowance of polygamy. And he declared undistinguishing and exterminating warfare as part of his religion against all the rest of mankind. The essence of his doctrine was violence and lust, said John Quincy Adams, the 6th US President. To be a good Muslim, you have to love what Allah loves and hate what Allah hates, and Allah hates the kafir. Here is a poem taken straight out of Muhammad's biography. A poem of the Battle of Hunain. Crushing the heads of the non-believers, now choking them with bare hands, now splitting their skulls with a sharp sword. Obedience to Allah and Muhammad. We conquered with his flag and commission a glorious life and authority that will not cease. The day we trod down the Kafirs, we did not turn from the Prophet's orders. In battle, people only heard the exhortation and smashing of skulls. By swords that severed the necks of warriors at a blow, we left the slain cut to pieces. 'Tis Allah we please, not man.